The next speaker I'm bringing up, his name is Robert James Collier Jr. I just love saying that. Robert, again, has reached back and grabbed people, his peers along the way. And I really admire that. Robert has taught me so much. Ruby mentioned this, and it reminded me of Robert. Robert started this thing where, I told you guys I left my own notes, but this is not good, but this is my Robert started this thing where he will call or text us, his parents, and say, don't call me because I'm going to turn off my phone for a day. I'm not answering any text or Facebook. I just want you guys to know, don't call me. And I'm thinking,
not those words, but yeah.
Well, whatever. Well, that's not okay. And I'm thinking, I ain't gonna call us and tell us not to call him. But he was saying that he was, what he calls it, I don't know. I'll let him. What do you call it, Rob?
Yeah, it's detox. Technology detox.
Technology detoxing. I just love that. That is so neat. So I'm gonna try that now. Okay. So when someone calls me, I'm gonna reach out to you and say, don't call me, don't text me. I'm technology detoxing. So let me please help me welcome Robert James Collier Jr.
Thank you for that warm introduction about my technology detox. I don't call people, I let them know. But most I just don't respond. And so if we send a text during my technology detox, it'll take about 10 minutes to get that time. Oh. Oh, ruined my surprise. Okay, back to the start. There that guy. That is 19-year-old Robert James Collier Jr. When I was 19 years old, I received a phone call from my friend. He let me know that he had just had some valuables stolen from him. And not only that, but he was beat up by about 3 guys. I was 2 hours away in college at the time, and I had two options at that point. I could either just console him and tell him I apologize and things are going to get better, or I could try to help out. I chose the second option. And what I did was I grabbed two of my friends on the basketball team, both 6'5" and above, and put them in a truck and decided that we were going to go to that city and get that stuff back. So I had one friend who was 6'5" and 220 pounds, another friend who was 6'7" and 240 pounds. Put them in a truck, we drove 2 hours to that city, and when I arrived there were 10 cars waiting and about 15 people. Apparently it was big news that I was coming there. We eventually found out who it was that facilitated my friend getting beat up and having his stuff stolen, and I asked to be driven there. So we had a driver, my friend who had been beaten up was sitting in the back seat, and I was also sitting in the back seat as well. Once we made it to the home, I told him to stay in the car, and I began walking into this home to find this person. So you can imagine this was East Texas. It was pitch black, and yeah, East Texas right there. It was pitch black, and we were walking. I was walking up to this home. It's kind of creeping like this, and apparently somebody had told him that I was coming because in front of me was him with a shotgun pointed directly at my face, and I guess I had watched too many movies because what I told him was this: don't pull that out unless you're going to use it. Now, that may sound like a movie. It may sound like something from There it goes. From The Godfather, or one of my favorite movies, Casino. No, there we go. But it wasn't. This was real life. And in fact, not only did I make him put the gun down, but I had him to get in the car and apologize to my friend. He cried while he did it, and we got all the valuables back. So, most people hearing something like that would say that's the most fearful situation they've ever been in, right? It isn't for me. It wasn't the time when I jumped out of a plane 12,000 feet up, skydiving. That was fun. You can see the smile on my face. It wasn't the time where I fell off a 20-foot cliff and fell backwards. I could have broke my neck, I could have broke my back, but I laughed afterwards. That was fine. And it wasn't the time when I was in the hospital and I had a doctor to pull spinal fluid out of my spine and tell me that it was one of three things, two of which were fatal, and the other he didn't know. Apparently it was that third. None of those were the most fearful situations I've been in. The most fearful time for me are the times where I felt that I was inadequate or that I would be perceived as inadequate by my friends, my families, and others. And I don't know about you, but when I look at the list of things that people are most afraid of, and public speaking is above the fear of death, I think that's a representation that others are also afraid of being inadequate or being perceived as inadequate by their peers. So it's not the situations that we have a shotgun pointed at our face and we need to be prepared for. It's not the situations where we're jumping out of a plane. It's the everyday situations where we feel that others are judging us. Those are the times that we need to be prepared in order to combat fear. And because this is breaking through fear, we're going to discuss that. Right? So what I want to do is I want to give you yes. All right, cool. 3 practical scientific methods to overcome your fear. We're going to talk about the most important time of your day. We're going to talk about feeling into your fear and what that means. And then we're going to ask the question, what's the worst that could happen? Now, if you're taking notes, great. If you're not, this is the time to start taking notes. The most important time of your day are the first and last 10 minutes of your day. Why is that? Why is this the most important time? Well, Michael McLean, the author of Momentum, How to Build It, Keep It, and Give Back, says that the first 10 minutes of our day are the most crucial, and starting out on the right foot sets the tone for the rest of the week. He says, quote, a lot of people operate on autopilot, so they jump straight onto the phone. Raise your hand if you've done that before. Doesn't mean that you do it all the time, but have any of you just jumped out of bed and hopped on your phone? Yeah, it's normal. But this means that you and they instantly start spending the day reacting, and they're not in the driver's seat. Why is that important? Well, it's important because what we want for you to do is to start the day on a positive note that lays a foundation for a great day and for a great week. The idea that I'm going to present to you is that you deliberately do something rather than doing something unintentionally. The difference is reacting versus responding. And so if you allow yourself to do something deliberate and intentional in the first 10 minutes of your day, you're sending your brain a message saying, I have control of this. This is something that I choose to do. And so what are those things that you should be doing for the first 10 minutes of your day? I'm glad you asked. What you should do instead, these are just a couple examples. You want to make your bed. You can write down 3 things that you're grateful for the day. Or you can set your intentions for the day. Personally, what I do is the first 10 minutes I wake up out of bed, I meditate. Because what that allows for me to do is to forget what has happened the day prior to, and then instead allows me to focus on the here and now, present, right? Responding as opposed to reacting. But mind you, it's the first 10 minutes and the last 10 minutes, so you should be doing something in the last 10 minutes of your day as well. So what would that be? That could be reading. That could be prayer. That could also be thinking about the things you're grateful for. The reason why it's important to do something in the last 10 minutes of your day as well is because you start your day with intention, but then at the end of your day, you want to think about the things that went well, right? So we want to have momentum going into the following day. Because when you go to sleep, you don't, excuse me, I curse, so I apologize in advance. You don't want shit to happen, you don't want to bring shit into your dreams and the time that you sleep. You want that gone. Wipe that slate clean, right? So the first 10 minutes and the last 10 minutes of your day are the most important, okay? Next, I want to talk about feeling into your fear. There's a study published in the journal Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. And what this shows are the points or the areas in your body that are activated by certain emotions. And so we see anger here in the areas that it activates, as well as disgust and happiness. But this is the topic that I want us to concern about right now. This is fear. So what happens is when you have an emotion like fear, what that does is it produces a feeling. The feeling is the body's recognition of that emotion. And from that feeling, you have sensations on your body. This is science. Personally, I like to speak in science so you know the facts behind it. And so when we have this sensation, what that means is we feel it. We feel it somewhere in our body. Our brains are responding to it. And so the area that you feel fear most is likely in your chest, in your stomach. And this area is your solar plexus. How much time do I have left? 3? What you can do with fear is when you feel that fear, I don't want you to push away against it. That's the opposite of what we should be doing. Instead, just observe it. Just observe the fear in your solar plexus. And like any emotion, it goes away. It dissipates, right? It's just the natural state of emotions and thoughts and feelings. It dissipates. So don't push away from fear. That actually does the opposite. Just observe it. Just see it there, observe it, allow it to dissipate. I have a friend who has built, or rather generated over $100 million in revenue from his business. And the thing that he teaches is this, what I'm just teaching you right now. He says that's the source for his success. It's feeling an emotion and just allowing it to dissipate. If you practice meditation, that's what that teaches as well. Right? So this is huge. Okay? The last thing is I want you to ask yourself, what's the worst that could happen? There's a simple 3-step technique. Have you guys heard of How to Win Friends and Influence People, the book? Yeah, raise your hand if you've heard of that book. Okay. So that author, Dale Carnegie, I believe, also wrote a book called How to combat worry and anxiety, something like that. He's the one that came up with this 3-step technique over working with hundreds of different people. And what he says is, ask yourself, number 1, what's the worst that could happen? Number 2, prepare yourself mentally to accept the worst if necessary. And then number 3, calmly figure out how to improve upon the worst should it happen. Now this may be counterintuitive because sometimes we think just to push away the negativity, the fear. What I'm saying is embrace it, right? Remember number 2, this is third. So I want you to embrace it. The reason why this helps is because we find out that things that we're afraid of most often have no rooting in reality, right? We've heard that acronym, false evidence appearing real, right? That's all fear is. And so this is a scientific, practical technique to get around fear. And I'm going to use an example. So let's say Sarah, this is the name for the example I'm giving. Sarah says, I want to quit my job and start my own business. So how would she do this? She would follow this simple 3-step technique. What's the worst that could happen? I fail miserably, everyone will think I'm a failure, and I'll lose all my savings. It's not uncommon for someone to think something like that. Number 2, accept it. Accept it. Okay, if that were to happen, then what? Well, number 3 is improve upon it. If I fail, it won't be the first time or the last. We fail, and we'll continue to fail. If everyone thinks I'm a failure, I'll be embarrassed for a while, but I'll get over it. And third, I can get a job to earn an income plus a job working on the weekends to rebuild my savings. It might take me 2 years of working weekends to rebuild my savings for 6 months, but it's possible. This is a practical method to disrupt, unpack, and overcome your fears. It's very valuable. Last thing, I need to be quick, so I think I have about 20 seconds. When people were asked their biggest regrets on their deathbed, it wasn't the things that they did. It was the things that they didn't do. They regretted most the things that they had the dream and ambition to do, but they allowed fear to get in the way of that. So I encourage you to use these techniques to get past fear and to live your greatest life. Thank you.